Hi, my name is Richard Fair, and I'm a history and government instructor at Western Texas College. I'm also a board member of the Scurry County Museum and a Texas attorney. Uh, for the past few months, the Scurry County Museum and I have worked on an oral history project primarily focused on recognizing the lives of veterans in Scurry County. So far, our results have been positive, and we hope to consider this an open project that will continue well into the future. The interviews featured on the Scurry County Museum Facebook page are the product of a collaborative effort between Western Texas College and the Scurry County Museum. The veterans featured all proudly served and either settled in or returned to Scurry County after their tour of duty ended. The purpose of this project is to ensure that we never forget the individual sacrifices of our veterans. While interviewing all veterans is outside the scope of what we're able to do here in Scurry County, we're actively seeking veterans from all wars in or around Scurry County to share their memories of service. So if you're a veteran or you know a veteran locally who'd be interested in talking to us about their lives and experiences they had in the military, please contact Tessa Holiday at the Scurry County Museum, and we'd be happy to set up an interview. Finally, before I talk about the history of Veterans Day, I'd like to say thank you to Tessa Holiday, the Executive Director of the Scurry County Museum, and my wife, Jean Fair, who's also a Texas historian and attorney. And both of them have been absolutely instrumental to the success of this project so far. And we're just looking to continue this and keep trying to record all the memories we can of veterans. 103 years ago today, an eerie silence fell on the battlefields of Europe as World War I came to a conclusion. At roughly 5 a.m. on the morning of November 11th, 1918, an armistice was signed in a railroad car parked near the front lines on the outskirts of a French forest. Colonel Thomas Gaulick, an intelligence officer serving with the U.S. 1st Infantry Division, recounted, quote, "On the morning of November 11th, I sat in my dugout, which was our division headquarters, talking to our Chief of Staff, Colonel John Greeley, and Lieutenant Colonel Paul Peabody, our G1. A Signal Corps officer entered and handed us the following message. Official radio from Paris, 6:01 a.m., November 11th, 1918. Marshal Foch to the Commander-in-Chief. Number 1, hostilities will be stopped on the entire front beginning at 11 o'clock, November 11th, as of the French hour. Number 2, the Allied troops will not go beyond the line reached at that hour on that date until further orders. All over the world on November 11th, 1918, people were celebrating, dancing in the streets, and just hoping this armistice meant an end to what was known at this time as the war to end all wars. Never before had carnage to the degree that we had seen in World War I been witnessed. But not on the front line, no one was celebrating. So many of the veterans of World War I on the front on that fateful day believed the armistice was merely a temporary measure and the war would continue. It's almost like they'd heard it before. They said, well, we've seen these armistices before and they never last. But as the evening of November 11th came, there was an unearthly quietness penetrating the souls of these tired soldiers who started the first log fires lit along the front lines in possibly years. Some of these soldiers tried to reassure themselves and each other that there were no enemy spies lurking beyond the next hill. And others simply prayed that no German bombers were approaching to blast them out of existence. Many talked in low, hushed voices, while others just began to exhibit a sense of optimism. In short, everybody had a mixture of emotions. But one thing was common amongst all of them. They were inconsolably nervous about the future. Though the armistice initially expired after 36 days, it was extended several times before eventually the Treaty of Versailles was signed the following year in 1919, finally bringing peace to a war-torn Europe. As a holiday, the first Armistice Day was celebrated in England at Buckingham Palace on the morning of November 11, 1919. Those in attendance observed a 2-minute silence as a mark of respect for the lives lost or those left behind in the war. And today, even in 2021, we still continue this tradition of observing 2 minutes of silence each Veterans Day. Here in Texas, under Central Standard Time at 1:11 p.m. on November 11th. So on the same day that the first celebration of Armistice Day was taking place in Britain, U.S. President Woodrow Wilson issued a message to commemorate the first Armistice Day and really to express how he felt about what this day was likely to mean for Americans in the future. Particularly, he reflected, Armistice Day will be filled with solemn pride in the heroism of those who died in this country's service, and with gratitude for the victory, both because of the thing from which it had freed us, but because of the opportunity it had also given America to show her sympathy with peace and justice in the councils of nations. So in short, the entire context of early celebrations of Armistice Day were merely a commitment to the goal of establishing world peace, as Memorial Day already existed at this time for remembrance of our deceased veterans. And so, for the next decade or so, the tone of world peace continued to be the primary theme of Armistice Day. Even so, in 1928, 10 years after Armistice Day, when Congress adopted a concurrent resolution that requested the president to issue a proclamation, quote unquote, calling upon the officials to display the flag of the United States on all government buildings on November 11th, and inviting the people of the United States to observe the day in schools and churches or other places with appropriate ceremonies expressive of our gratitude for peace and our desire for the continuance of friendly relations with all other peoples. Once again, here's this theme of world peace. And at the time, President Calvin Coolidge acknowledged veterans weren't the focus of the congressional resolution, but he made a point to keep veterans in the forefront of American thought when he talked about progress with the Veterans Bureau, which is the precursor to the Veterans Affairs of today. And President Coolidge noted, our admirations of veterans are boundless. It's not mere idle form. It's no shadow without reality, but a solid and substantial effort rising from the dignity of a sacrifice made by all the people that they might in some degree recognize and recompense those who have served in time of national peril. Fast forward 10 years. So in commemoration of the 20th anniversary of Armistice Day, ironically, this is 1938, Western Europe once again is crumbling under the pressure of military instability brought on by the Third Reich. Yet again, on the 20th anniversary, Congress passes another act to officially declare November 11th an each year a legal holiday, citing that the day would be quote-unquote dedicated to the cause of world peace and thereafter celebrated and known as Armistice Day. Once again, with the eve of World War II looming, peace was the goal and the purpose of the holiday. And we still haven't called it Veterans Day yet. However, the rapid mobilization of American forces needed to once again fight this existential threat in the second quote-unquote war to end all wars wasn't lost on President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He first acknowledged that Armistice Day was traditionally a day for observance and remembrance of the veterans of World War I. But in his 1942 Armistice Day address at Arlington National Cemetery, he did something no president had done before. He had connected the mission of World War I to the threat of fascism looming with the Second World War. And he had a great quote. And he said at Armistice Day in 1942, "The American unknown soldier who lies here did not give his life on the fields of France merely to defend his American home for the moment that was passing. He gave it so that his family, his neighbors, and all of his fellow Americans might live in peace in the days to come. His hope wasn't fulfilled. American soldiers now are giving their lives today in all continents and on the seas in order that the dream of the unknown soldier may come true at last." And we all know what happened in World War II. The Allies won, and we had a flood of veterans coming back to America after 1945. It wasn't until the end of the World War II that Armistice Day's purpose became a debatable topic. A man and World War II veteran, an Alabama native by the name of Raymond Weeks, became very active after returning from the war. He even served 3 terms in the Alabama House of Representatives. He joined a ton of organizations, but he was most passionate about establishing a National Veterans Day, specifically to honor America's veterans, both living and deceased. So, almost a year after he returned home, Weeks began petitioning General Dwight D. Eisenhower around 1946, and then came up with the idea to celebrate the first National Veterans Day on November 11th, 1947, in his hometown of Birmingham, Alabama. Before long, Raymond Weeks became the founder and national chair of the National Veterans Day Project. For 8 years, Weeks petitioned Congress to rename Armistice Day to Veterans Day. Finally, in 1954, he got his wish. Kansas Representative Edward Reese sponsored a bill that would recognize the holiday we had known for years as Armistice Day, now as Veterans Day. In a proclamation officially recognizing November 11th as Veterans Day, now President and former General Dwight D. Eisenhower stated in 1954, "Let us solemnly remember the sacrifice of all those who fought so valiantly on the seas, in the air, and on foreign shores, to preserve our heritage of freedom, and let us reconsecrate ourselves to the task of promoting enduring peace, so that their efforts shall not have been in vain." Finally, we get the culmination of Armistice Day and Veterans Day together. And it takes Dwight D. Eisenhower to get us there. Arguably, that some people believed was one of the best presidents of the 20th century. He connected the dots right there. But when we look at Veterans Day today, it largely remained the same from the Cold War to the present, absent the quirky Uniform Monday Holiday Act in the 1970s. And if you weren't alive in the 1970s, I wasn't, even though most of my students think I've been probably alive since Moses. In the 1970s, Veterans Day got moved to the 4th Monday in October from 1971 to 1977. Because the idea was they wanted a uniform holiday where everybody would have Monday off after a holiday. Well, it worked for some other holidays, but there was a lot of protest about this. And certain states even refused to move the holiday due to the historical significance. It was about our veterans. It was about, despite the fact that we had evolved it from Armistice Day to Veterans Day, the historical significance of that day, November 11th, was not lost. So after protesting in lots of states saying, "I don't care what law you pass, we're not going to do it," Veterans Day was restored to November 11th in 1978, and it's been that way ever since. And over time, generations of Americans have come to recognize November 11th as a day of reflection. It's a day of remembrance for those gallant few of all generations that believed, fought for, and in some cases died for a set of ideas and ideals so that our country, the United States of America, may still stand. And as President Abraham Lincoln said on a solemn November afternoon in 1863, that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. And as we've seen often throughout our history, the men and women of the armed forces, from generation to generation, tirelessly and selflessly put themselves in harm's way for a greater and nobler purpose than themselves. This purpose of a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. To preserve that. Finally, if we want to honor our veterans, not just twice a year, not just Memorial Day, not just Veterans Day, but every day, we have to remember that the sacrifice they made on the battlefield needs to be met with our own solemn civic duty for those of us that didn't serve, to ensure that their sacrifices weren't in vain. How can you help? Help a disabled veteran with their groceries. Sit down with a relative who served during the holidays. Record an interview with them the same way we're doing with these oral histories. And just ask them about their lives. Call your congressman, call your congresswoman. Let them know that our veterans deserve the best medical care possible. Or simply just say thank you to a veteran. Thank you for your sacrifice. Thank you for your selflessness. Most of all, thank you for your service. We all can do our part to make sure that the greatest of us are not forgotten. Thank you for your time today.